If you're on this channel, Class Online School, if this is your first time of dropping by on this channel, this is a channel where we teach you educational stuff. We handle the Nigerian curriculum for both junior secondary and senior secondary. And today I'm going to take economics as a subject. We have been on the series of the mind, the concept of the mind. We are done with the concept of the mind. Today we are going to focus on supply, the concept of supply. And in the course of this class today, we're going to take 4 objectives, 4 bullet points that we'll go over today. We'll talk about what is supply. We will see the law of supply just like we saw in the law of the mind. Then we'll talk about the shadow curve, and we'll draw a curve. We'll talk about the supply schedule, and then we'll draw a curve from the supply schedule. Then lastly, we want to explain the determinants of equilibrium price. That is what we're going to talk about today in our class. But let's take the first bullet point we want to discuss, which is supply. In a general term, supply is that which the producer brings out in the market for customers to buy. The goods in which the producer have produced and is taken out for distribution to be sold to consumers. These consumers can be final consumers, they can be wholesaler, retailer, as the case may be. If you remember the class I took on channel of distribution under our business study class, you can check that video. And so we can say that supply, this is the quantity of any commodity that the producers are able and willing to offer for sale at alternative price. That is to say, the price is not fixed. At alternative price, they can come at different prices, just like demand come at different prices. It is the quantity of any commodity that producers are willing and able to offer for sale at alternative price over a given period of time. That is supply. We can equally say that supply of a commodity is the quantity of that commodity which a producer is willing and able to sell at a given price over a given period of time. So, the amount of commodity which the producer is willing to sell out at a given price and at a given time, and it has to be at alternative price. So it doesn't have to be at one price. That means price will vary. You can sell at 100, 200, 300, 400, as the case may be, as the production goes. That is supply. The amount of commodity which the producer is willing to sell at a given price, at a given time, at alternative price. We've seen what supply is. Now let's go to what is the law of supply. We saw the law of the mind in our previous class. Remember, we are still on the concept of the mind and supply. Now, what is the law of supply? Now let's take the point 2 of our class, the law of demand. The law of supply, not demand. The law of supply. We've seen that supply has to do with the quantity of commodity that producers are willing to sell at a given time, at a given price, at alternative prices. Now, the law of supply tells us that all things being equal, the higher the price, the higher the quantity of a commodity that will be supplied. Then the lower the price, the lower the quantity that will be supplied. It is called the second law of supply. I'll take a class to list all the law of demand and supply as we go further, not in this your XX1 level. So that's to say that when price is high, producers are ready to produce more into the market. At that point, the law invariably says that when price is high, commodity, they produce more commodity because it will make for higher productivity. That is what the law was insinuating or is insinuating. But where price is low, the profitability ratio is going to be low, and so producers are going to produce less. That's just the implication of the law of supply. That when price is high, producer seems to produce more product, send it into the market to sell more. But when price is low, producer seems to supply low to the market because price is low. That is the second law of supply. That's the second law of supply. There are other laws that shows other relationship as it interacts with the market, about the production process, the cost efficiency, and the rest of them. But on this law we are discussing, it's just a law that let you know that the higher the price, the higher production producers will produce. The lower the price, the lower the production that producers are ready to give out to the market. We're talking the second one, which is the law of supply. Now let's go to our third bullet point, which is the supply schedule and the supply curve. Let me try to explain what the supply schedule is before I go over drafting a schedule for you. The supply schedule, this is a graph showing the relationship between price and quantity of that commodity that is supplied in the business. It is a graphical diagrammatic representation of a supply schedule, a graphical representation of a supply schedule. So the supply schedule tells you the relationship between the price and the quantity supplied. So if I want to draw the schedule for a supply, and then we'll draw the curve, then you will see the relationship, how price interacts. That is what the supply schedule is. A process whereby the quantity supplied interacts with price. At what price was it supplied? At what price is it sold? And you put it in a form of in a diagram, a graphical diagram, to show the relationship, so that at mere glance you see how the prices interact and how this quantity came into the market. That is what the supply schedule is all about. So let's go to how we can draw up a supply schedule and a supply curve. And let me use this diagram to explain what a supply schedule is. Remember, in our definition of, in our explanation of what the law of supply tells us, that the law of supply says that if the quantity, the price is high, the quantity supply will be high. If the price is low, the quantity supply will be low. Now let's try to use this diagram to derive that law. You see, at 100, this is a farmer supply schedule for bags of rice. At 100, the farmer supplied 50 bags. This is the number of bags, this is a price. The farmer supplied 50 bags to the market because the price is high. But when the price went down to 80 naira, the farmer supplied 40. When the price later go down again to 60 naira, the farmer supplied 30. When it went further, bit down again to 40 naira, the farmer supplied 20. When it went further low, the farmer supplied 10. So the law states that when price is high, quantity supplied to the market is going to be high. This is the schedule, this is the supply schedule. This is the explanation of how it goes. So you see how price interacts with the quantity taken out to the market. Now, how do we draw a curve from this schedule? Now, this is a curve I have drawn. I told you how to pick your scale when we're dealing with basic economics, how economics concepts interact with graph and charts. We pick our scale. Depending on what scale you want to pick. Are you picking 10 units? Are you taking 20 units? This is my scale. This is the price of the bags of rice. This is the quantity supply. So, I've taken my scale 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. That's to say 20 units to 1 cl. Now look at it. When price was 20, quantity supply was 10. When price was 40, quantity supply was 20. When price was 60, quantity supply was 30. When price was 80, quantity supply was 40. And when price was 100, quantity supply was 50. Here we draw our demand curve. I just draw the supply curve. And you see how the supply curve goes. The demand curve slants down because the higher the price, the higher the demand. The lower the price, the higher the demand. But in supply, the higher the price, the higher the supplier or the producer is ready to put into the market. So the supply curve slants this way. Why the demand curve slants this way? Because that one talks about the demand being high at a lower price. But this tells you the demand, the supplier supply high when price is high. So this is our supply curve. This is how we derive the schedule, and this is how we plot the graph. You can pick up a graph and plot this example I have just given. You're going to come out with a perfect supply curve. The same way I have put up the supply curve for a particular farmer, you can have farmer A, B, C. That way you can plot the supply curve too with this same rudiment or this same principle that I've used to plot this graph. Now let's go to equilibrium. At what price can a price be said to be at equilibrium? That's our next point and our final point on this class. Equilibrium price. When we say equilibrium, it is a process whereby two comparing variables are the same. Two variables you are comparing are the same. Same in quantity, same in quality, same in whatever your comparison is. That's to say these two variables have no variation. They are equal in size. They are equal in weight, depending. So when we talk about the determinants of what determines an equilibrium price, it is just a point at which the demand of consumers are the same as the supplier's demand that is putting out in the market. That's to say, the supplier is willing to give out a particular number at a particular price, and demanders are ready to get all that product at that same price without having struggle with price or the number of products sent to the market. So the supplier is ready to supply a number, and the demand is ready to take off all that the supplier supplies. That's the equilibrium price. Demand and supply are at equilibrium. They are at the same point. Suppliers are ready to buy up what producers have put out in the market at that particular price, and it is convenient for both parties, both suppliers and demand, and those who are demanding, that's to say the consumers. They are ready to buy it up at that price because it is convenient for them and it is convenient for the suppliers. All things being equal in a perfect market. Now let's see what I have. Equilibrium price is that price at which the quantity demanded is equal to the quantity of commodity supplied. The point where the demand curve meets the supply curve is called equilibrium position, where both meet, or equilibrium point. Under this condition, both suppliers and consumers can be satisfied and there will be no pressure on price. Because the price at which supplier wants to supply it, demand, those who are demanding for it are ready to pay for that price and buy it off. The point at which the demand and supply curve meets. I will use a small illustration to show you the meeting point, but know that demand equilibrium has to do with determinants of two variables, and the two variables we are determining here is the demand and the supply curve. At what point supply and demand meet? The same quantity suppliers are ready to give VAT, same quantity, demanders are ready to buy it up at the same price, at the same time. They are interacting. That's equilibrium determinant. So that is what determines what an equilibrium is. I'll use a little diagram to show you when the supply and the demand curve meets. Let's use this pictorial diagram to explain equilibrium. Let's assume that the farmer produces rice and it supplies at different price. Let's say it supplies at this price: 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5 in price. And the bags is supply 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Get your graph and plot that. This is what he produced. Now, when price was 5 naira, the demand schedule is going to be higher because demand will be high, but the supply will drop. That's how it will go. Then, at what point do we say it's at equilibrium? This is the demand curve. Here is our demand curve, and this is our supply curve. So, at what point is a price determined to be at equilibrium? It's at a point whereby the demand and the supply are the same. And that is between 20 to 25. Let's assume it's just 23. So at the price of 23 naira and at the quantity of 20, all things being equal in a perfect market, there's going to be an equilibrium because it is going to be same size as in the quantity the producer, which is the supplier, is ready to give out to the market. The same quantity the consumer, which is a buyer, is ready to buy out without any price dragging, without any price problem. They are comfortable at that point. The supplier is comfortable, the demanders are comfortable at that time. That is what we call equilibrium price, where the supply and the demand curve meet. If we try to plot a perfect graph, use that same example I gave for a bag of rice. In the supply curve, substitute and put a price, a time where both price meet, and draw the curve in a perfect graph sheet. You see that there will be a relationship. So that relationship that interacts between the demand and the supply at a particular point that determines the price and the quantity being at the same level, being on the same scale, is the equilibrium price. So that will be it for our class for today. We'll discuss a number of things: the demand schedule and the demand curve, the law of demand, the determinant of equilibrium, and we'll see what a supply is. Thank you for being part of our class. In our next class, we'll discuss other topics in our economics class. Till I come your way next time, I am always happy to be here. Comment below the comment box. Give us thumbs up. Share our videos. That way people will know what we are doing here. To all my subscribers from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Zimbabwe, from Zambia, from Togo, I am happy that you're always dropping by. Thank you for always dropping by. Until I come your way next time.